Welcome back to the Chasing Tone podcast. Today, Blake and I discuss the entire history of the Chasing Tone podcast since this is the 4-year anniversary. We discuss all the things that you probably did not know with some very interesting stories to go along with it. So let's jump into it.
I bless the rains down in Africa. That song gets in my head and it won't leave.
Well, that's because
It
it's
just won't.
Weezer.
Well, Weezer does have a lot of hits, but that's not one of them.
No, I heard it. I heard that
I know
they
you
just
did.
came out with a new song and that was it. Africa.
I know they did. They shouldn't have, but they did.
Wait, you're trying to act like that someone else made that song before.
A little band called Toto, my friend.
No,
You know
Toto was a dog in The Wizard of Oz.
Toto was indeed a dog in The Wizard of Oz. So, like, this is like a truly a chicken or the egg situation here that we found ourselves in, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah, it's something we should talk about on this episode. Which came first,
Oh yeah,
Toto the
everyone
dog
needs to know.
or Toto the band?
I'm gonna go with Toto the band. Because Toto the dog was just an annoying little yipper who got sucked up into a tornado.
Hey, man, dogs have feelings too. You're a dog hater, aren't you? It comes out.
I'm not a dog
Blake's
hater.
a dog hater.
I'm not a dog hater.
I just heard it.
Don't spread that around. You can't. Somebody's gonna grab that soundbite, and that's all that anyone's gonna know me as a caninist.
And it's going to
if that's a
spread.
thing.
It's going to spread all over your Facebook group as you're a hater. You're a dog hater.
I'm not a dog hater. I don't have any desire to own a dog, but I like other people's dogs.
What's a
Is that cool?
technical term for a dog hater?
I'm sure that's a thing. It's probably like a dog phobia or something.
Let's see. There are no categorical synonyms for this word. Oh,
Well,
man.
We'll figure that out later. We don't need to talk about that. What we should talk about, though, is what you just told me, because today's kind of a special day, sort of.
It is.
It's like a birthday of sorts.
It is actually very much a birthday. So, 2014, I was working in an office with a guy named Travis Feaster, a guy named Max Jeffries.
Mhm.
And believe it or not, I actually was not there for episode number 1. The intention was that I wanted to create a podcast that would, because, I mean, keep in mind, this is 2014, June 20th, 2014.
Right.
And at that
Podcasts
time,
were big, but they weren't as big as they are now.
nowhere near. And there was like very, very few guitar podcasts. I think Lauren Hunt, I believe his name is, had, and I think he still has it. I don't know. I haven't checked lately, but he had a podcast called The Guitar Podcast that I would listen to occasionally. In fact, I did an interview with him once at our office there, and was kind of picking his brain about podcasts because I'm like, there's just not enough of these.
Right.
I mean, like we've talked about before. I mean, there's podcasts, but I don't always want to listen to comedy, or I don't always want to listen to, business management podcasts or whatever.
Right.
I'm like, how come there's not really that many gear podcasts? And he was explaining to me like it's not that big of a demographic, and it's not. But it is. I mean, it is decent,
And it's growing too.
Yeah.
That's and the amount of gear podcasts or guitar podcasts in general has exploded in the last like year,
right?
or year and a half, especially. Like
Right.
it's been exponential in my opinion.
Yeah, big time. So I think for us, and I'll get back to my story in just a second. Like I use a company called Buzzsprout, and they kind of give you this algorithm that tells you roughly how many subscribers you have, and we're sitting at about 5,000 right now. So not too bad. It grows every month, so that's a good thing, right?
Tell your friends.
Tell your friends. Share with
That's right.
share with your brothers and sisters and significant others. I'm sure. I'm sure your wife loves listening to the Chasing Tone podcast, doesn't she, Blake?
No. No. But my mom does.
Your mom does. Yes, that's true. Your mom is hello, Mrs. Weiland.
Yes.
Greetings from Indiana. So anyway, I'm talking to Travis and Max. I'm like, we need to make a podcast. And just talk, we always are talking in the office about this stuff. Why don't we just record it?
Mm-hmm.
We'll come up with a few topics and we'll just loosely have a discussion around these 3 topics. And I use
Very
the term,
loosely.
Yeah, I use the term loosely, very enthusiastically. Like I don't want it. I never did want it to be like hard. This is the topics and this is all we're doing. You know what I mean? I think, there's a place for those, but that doesn't fit my personality. And we've talked about it before. You got to do what feels authentic to you, right? And what feels authentic to me is just having a conversation about all kinds of different stuff. And hopefully the gear part of it comes into the equation, right?
Yeah, sometimes.
Sometimes. That's the trick. So anyways.
So this is 4 years today?
Yes, 4 years, right? 4 years ago today. And so, I'm telling them we need to have this podcast. And they're like, well, do you want to be on it? And I said, no, because I don't want it to be a Wampler podcast or a Brian Wampler podcast. Shows you how much things can change in a few years.
Oops. Yeah.
But that was really my thought was I want it to be its own thing that stands on its own 2 feet. I don't want it to be a commercial for Wampler stuff. I just want to talk about gear in general. All different companies, all different types of stuff, and I want to be fair and balanced. I hate that term because it implies like conservatism, and I'm pretty much right down the middle with stuff. But anyways, back to my point. So they started the first, I think, I'm trying to remember. It might have been the first 2 or 3 it was just them. And then I joined, maybe it was the second one. Anyways, the first one I know for sure I wasn't on.
Okay.
And so, we made the podcast and listening back. And Travis actually said, he's like, and keep in mind, Travis and Max have been friends for years and years and years. So they know each other. They know each other really well and can read each other really well. Right. And, they'll finish each other's sentences and stuff. So, but they just felt like there was like this missing component to it. And I didn't know what it was. Like I was thinking, well, who else can we get on the show? And he's like, well, why don't you come on? I said, and I actually told him, I said, I'll do one episode with you guys. Maybe I'll pop in one every now and then, but I have no intentions on being on every one. Seriously.
By the way, happy birthday, man. Happy birthday.
Wow. I don't think I even realized that.
No, I've never talked about this. I had zero intentions on being the host of my own podcast. Because I didn't want it to be a Wampler podcast.
You wanted it to be, that's it. Yeah, probably looking back, if you would have seen where it was going to go, maybe it would have been more branded a little bit, but I don't know. People know what's up. Chasing Tone, the logo's cool. It is sort of its own thing. Sort of. But yeah, just the nature of your involvement kind of makes it. How could it not be?
It's like it's like having a Seymour Duncan. Not that okay, hold on. Before I say this, I'm not elevating myself to Seymour Duncan or Paul Reed Smith. That's not what I mean at all. So put down your keyboards and don't email me with hate. So,
I'm going to. Too bad.
Except for you, Blake.
Okay.
So like I was thinking, and I told them this. I said, if I'm on every one, it's kind of like having Seymour Duncan on a podcast and expecting him not to talk about Seymour Duncan pickups, or Paul Reed Smith and him not talking about Paul Reed Smith guitars. So it's actually kind of been a struggle to come up with topics because I don't want it to be a strictly Wampler thing. And, so I will admit that, there are times like right now that I'll interject a small plug for myself, like for example, the fact that we're releasing the mini faux spring reverb on June 22nd in 2 days from the time
paid ad
as the time we record this. Yes. So if you like the old faux spring reverb, which only had about 2.2 seconds of reverb time, you'll love this one because it's smaller, of course, and smaller means it fits in a little nook and cranny that you can't fit anything else in, right? Plus, it goes down to 1 second, just a hair over 1 second, and then all the way almost to 4 seconds of spring type
Boing.
Ring.
Can you kick it? Make it boing?
You can kick it. It makes more of a clunk rather than a boing though when you kick it. I tried it and it just went clunk.
Thump. Thump.
Yeah.
I don't think that's what the surf guys are looking for.
No.
Don't kick your pedal.
Don't kick your pedal.
Not this one.
Yeah. Stomp on it, but don't kick on it. But anyways, where was I going with that? I lost my train of thought.
Shocking. You were talking about the genesis of chasing tone.
Right.
You didn't really want it to be,
right.
At least initially, you didn't want it to be a Wampler cast.
Right. I did not want it to be a Wampler cast. So, and in fact, this is going to be a little odd. I think I'm going to start taking on a few advertisers. I've had people ask me about advertising before, and I have no problem unless it's something that I myself don't believe in. Like if it's something that I think is just not a good product, then I'm not going to. I don't think it's a good fit for the audience. So
you're nicer than me. If Casper comes knocking on my door, you're going to hear about mattresses on the Tone Mob
well, that's
podcast.
what I'm saying. Yeah, I mean, if Haynes contacts me, he's like, "Can you talk about our socks on your podcast?" I'm going to say I appreciate it, but it's probably not the best fit. Get it?
But
the best fit.
Except I don't know very many people who don't wear socks. Most guitar players wear socks. I've seen those dirty, stinky socks in the pedal board videos and stuff. Well, I know you got socks.
Some of us dad rockers, though, we wear the khakis and the flip flops.
I'm sure you do.
I don't. I said some of us dad rockers do.
If you're dad rocking the right way, you will be wearing khakis, socks, and either white Nike Air Monarchs or New Balances.
Oh,
and you will refer to me as sport or big guy.
Once you see the new Mini Faux Spring Reverb video, which was, as you're listening to this, released last week, but is to be released as we record this in a few days, you'll notice that my dad attire goes way, way, way above and beyond khakis and flip flops.
Oh, exciting. I'm excited to see that.
Not really. No. So I got my cotton comfy shorts on,
Yeah.
They're kind of like sweatpants, but they're shorts. So they're Swartz, I guess.
Swartz. Yeah. Okay. If there can be jorts, why can't there be Swartz?
That's what I'm saying. If there can be jorts, why not Swartz? So I'm rocking the Swartz, and it's in the video, and I make sure to point it out that I got my Swartz on because I know someone's going to say, "Oh my God, dude! I swear to God, if that guy's he looks so stupid. My goodness, something like that." So I think, anyways, where I was going with that is I go above and beyond the typical dad khaki pants thing. Khaki shorts are what I wear when I want to dress up.
We're going out on the town, Amanda. Time for me to put on my khaki shorts.
Yeah,
we're hitting the Chili's.
See, that's the thing is you're extremely accurate.
I know. So what happened? So there's been, so we're talking about the podcast. You came on. What made you come back on the podcast? You know what I mean? You said, I don't want to do it all the time. I don't want it to become the Wampler thing. What was it? Just like we're stuck without you, Brian? What made you start coming back on a regular basis?
Honestly, I don't want to sound pompous or anything like that, but it was just, it felt like the right chemistry. Like it felt like the conversations that we have in the audience. It just felt more natural, more than anything else.
I think that's probably true because you guys were working together and you spent a good part of the day together and you would have the same kind of conversations on and off the podcast.
Right.
It probably did feel weird that the guy who's normally here talking with us is not here,
Yeah, I mean, it was, it definitely was. And I mean, from Travis's perspective, he liked being able to, like, whenever they were talking about something, ask me, well, Brian, why does that distortion pedal do this certain thing? And I would say, oh, well, that's basically because when the op amp is soft clipping with the diodes in that spot, it's going to create this thing here. And so then you have a low pass filter after that. And, so you're taking off a portion of the highs past 5.5K, right? So, like that sort of thing that Travis and like that wasn't their area of expertise, the nerdery side of it,
Right. Right.
So it kind of helped to be that circuit dork on the other end of the microphone. They could be like,
Well, actually, guys, that's not really the way it works.
Yeah.
Yeah. See, the thing is, inverting and inverting op amps are completely different than like a JFET, right? So let's really break that down in the mathematical terms.
you know, so
That's a good role. That's a good role for you. I mean, so I'll let you continue the story. Actually, let's finish the story before I go off on my tangent, which is actually related this time. So what happened after that? So you came on, and it seemed to be if I remember right, because this is me listening a few years ago, it was that iteration for quite a while, for like 70 plus episodes.
So let me look through here. I know it was that. I think it was like 76. Maybe somewhere around there.
Something like that.
Somewhere
Anyway.
around 76, 77, something like that. And then you'll notice if you watch the YouTube show, well, actually, if you listen to, you'll notice we went through a few different phases. So hang on a second. My lovely wife is texting me, and so I'm having to answer her whilst on the air. Sorry, guys. Just one
This is
second.
good casting. Should I sing while you do that or something?
I'm done. I just had to tell her how many breakfast sandwiches I wanted. You know,
Oh.
and not because she's like, I'm at White Castle. Do you want anything? And I said, sure. Grab me a couple breakfast sandwiches.
White Castle.
Dude, I live
Never
in
been.
Martinsville. We have a Chili's, a White Castle, and a McDonald's.
I've never been to a White Castle. Is it good? Because those
What?
those ones in the frozen aisle do not look good.
Are you kidding? You're asking me if White Castle is good. You've never been to a White Castle?
There's no White Castle around here.
Okay, I'm speaking to the residents of Portland, specifically the government. You're doing it wrong, man. You need a White Castle. No,
But
here's
to the White Castle, is the White Castle restaurant?
it's better than the frozen.
The burgers in the frozen section look terrible.
It's
Like,
better. It's better than the frozen. I will say this. It's kind of like Taco Bell, where it's very good going down, and then in about an
gotcha.
hour, it's a little painful. You know,
It's very disturbing that something marketed as a food product would have such effects on so many people so regularly.
I think their food is like in quotations when you look at the menu. You know,
It's food. It's government regulated food product.
like technically it's edible. Technically,
Right.
but it's White Castle doesn't compare to a great burger from your local restaurant where grass fed beef and all that kind of stuff, right? Just not the same thing.
Right.
So it's
But it's got that greasy kind of.
Yeah.
So it's good. It's good because it's not type of thing.
it's good every now and then, as long as you're going to be close to home in a restroom.
Noted. Good thing we're doing this podcast before you eat the White Castle.
That's exactly right. So we're about 76. Travis is taking a different job, right? So he's we had a long talk, and he's like, hey man, I have this really good opportunity. I can basically like quadruple my income. And he's like, but I don't want to leave you hanging. And I told him, I said, Travis, if you don't take this job, I'm going to be mad at you. Like I will be extremely angry and make fun of you every day. Like you would be stupid not to take this job. Like you got to, man. You got to do what's right for your family. And obviously quadrupling your income is right for your family.
Right.
Especially because at that time, I think he may have had a baby. He's got two kids now. So,
I think he did have the baby at that time, if I remember right.
Yeah. So, he was starting to think about what am I going to, I got to be thinking about my future here. And, I'm not sure playing some guitar on some videos is going to quite cut it in 20 years, I mean, he did more than that, but obviously he has a real talent for coming across great on video, I always thought. So anyways, Travis left. Frank Falbo of Falbo Designs, also, if you've heard the podcast, which is... Okay, I'm sorry. 79 was when Travis left, which happens to be when Frank was there as well, because we recorded like 2 or 3 different podcasts all at one time. And so Frank was on the next couple. And from there, I think we had a few guests. We had Anthony from Texas Blues Alley. I know we had Philippe in there somewhere from Caroline. I'm sorry, my mind's blanking on who else we had. But we had a few guests come in. John Fiesel from, what his company is? The Looper Company.
DC Pedalboard?
DC Pedalboard. He came on for an episode, I believe. And eventually, like, Max and I were staring at each other like, what are we going to do, man? I'm like, well, let's do a couple of these by ourselves and see what happens. And I love Max, so please don't take me wrong. But it was obvious that in the same way that on the microphone there was something missing with just Travis and Max, on the microphone there was an element missing between me and Max. You know,
yeah, without Travis, right?
Yeah, it just you know, it didn't convey properly to the people listening. I didn't feel, you know, nothing against either one of us. It's just chemistry, you know.
Yeah, just missing that thing that you had.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, because, you know, Travis is very extroverted. I'm kind of in the middle. Max is a little more introverted, right? And so if I'm around someone extroverted, I tend to, my personality kind of starts to swing to be a little more extroverted and outgoing. But if I'm around someone introverted, then I'm more quiet and reflective. So
Right.
you know, we would joke around because, you know, Max would be like, so we want to talk about it. I'm like, I don't know, man. You want to go in town and get some food? Sure. Let's, you know, like, I don't know. Let's go grab some food and think about it over food. Then we'd come back and you have anything we can talk about it? I'm like, I don't know. I'm kind of full though.
This White Castle is not sitting so well, Max.
Right. And so we would just sit around and then, you know, play on pedals and stuff and not get anything accomplished. And it was a day wasted. But anyways, so eventually I think it was episode, was it 100? We were at NAMM.
Yes, I remember that one. Because that's when we had actually met for the first time in real life.
In 2016?
Yes. Or 15? 15? 16? I don't remember which year. I've been to NAMM 3 times, and that was the first year. So whatever that was.
Let's see.
I think 15.
Yeah, I want to say it was episode 100. No. That's not true because we came back because episode 100, we had Alex Clay, who works with us on a lot of social media marketing stuff.
Oh, that's right.
He was with us at NAMM, so he joined us for a very odd edition of the Chasing Tongue podcast because we were at the Disneyland Hotel. They were playing Disney music around us, and it was about midnight. Everyone was exhausted, and I couldn't get any of the microphone setups to work, so I had to use my iPhone as the microphone between 3 people. You know, so it just it was a funky gig. So, anyways, we came back, and around this time, I believe about this time, Max said, you know, kind of came to me and said the same thing. He's like, hey, I've got an opportunity to make a lot more money in this other thing, but you know, I don't want to leave here in bad terms. And I said the same thing to him, like, Max, you've always got to focus on what's right for your family. You know, you got to. I'm not going to take it. I appreciate you giving me the notice. That helps me. But don't stay here because you are afraid of it affecting our friendship or whatever. So I think it was around 104, 103, 105, somewhere around there. We actually called it quits. We did our last Chasing Tone podcast.
The very last one ever.
For about, it was, well, I can tell you, it was from February 12th, it was 102, episode 102. From February 12th in 2016 to March 22nd, 2016, there's no podcasts.
Mm-hmm.
So episode 102 was what guitar effects will there be in 50 years? And that's where we said goodbye to everyone. And then I actually missed it. You know, I had a lot of people that were emailing me like, come on, man, you can't quit now. Come on.
Right.
And I thought about it. I'm like, you know what? We put a lot of hard work in this. Why would I stop now? I'm going to be talking to people about this stuff anyways. Why not just stick a mic in front of me and talk some more, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I've told people before, I barely graduated high school. So in case you can't tell, I ain't the most eloquent speaker in the room, you know?
Is you is or is you ain't?
Is I ain't. I ain't the most eloquent speaker in the room. So I'm trying to think when you and I hooked up. I think somewhere along the lines you interviewed me right around that area it might have been in March for the Tone Mob podcast.
I think I had interviewed you before that. Before NAMM, I believe. I don't have my stuff pulled up in front of me. But it was a little bit before that. You were fairly early on in Tone Mob episodes. And,
yeah, it was real early. Yeah.
Yeah. And I had been doing it for a little while, and I guess this would probably be a good segue into how Chasing Tone impacted my life. So one day Leon, my buddy Leon from Pelican Noiseworks, he came up to me and he said, "Hey, we're we're nerding out on stuff all the time." He's like, "Hey, you listen to Chasing Tone?" I'm like, "What's Chasing Tone?" And he's like, "Oh, it's a guitar podcast." I'm like, "What? How does that work? Like what's a guitar?" I'm like, I remember saying something along the lines of, "What on earth would you listen to on a guitar podcast?" Because we both listened to comedy podcasts and various other things, but I couldn't wrap my head around what that would even be. And he's like, "Oh, guys just sitting around and shooting the breeze and nerding out on gear, kind of like we do." I'm like, "Oh, okay, I'll give it a try." And so I started listening to Chasing Tone. I think it was probably around episode 20 or so.
Oh, wow. I didn't know it was that early.
Yeah, I listened to everything.
I'm sorry.
I don't think I maybe didn't go back and listen. I don't remember any episodes without you, so maybe I didn't quite get everything, but it was pretty early. I think it was around episode 20. I sent you guys some topics and you didn't use them, and because they probably weren't very good.
I don't remember that.
I don't remember what they were. I just remember like one of these days they're going to use my topics, and it never happened. But
it actually did.
You did?
Well, yeah. I mean, because now we've used about what episode are we at now? We're at 217 or so, 217, 218. So we've used about 100 different episodes of your topics so far.
Well, that's true. But what I gotta kind of give all three of you guys a thank you is because with that I started listening to it and I thought, well, this is entertaining. I enjoy this, and I started scratching my chin. I was like, I could probably do this. Like I like to talk about guitars and stuff. And I kind of did the same thing. I searched around and I was like, there really isn't much that is active. It was like basically the only active ones that I seen at the time. And in retrospect, I found out there were some more, but the only ones I knew of at the time were a 60 cycle hum and Chasing Tone. And so that got my wheels turning. I didn't really know what I was doing or what I was trying to do with it. But at some point, Tone Mob started, and I interviewed Ryan McCaffrey from McCaffrey Audio.
Yep.
While I was sitting up in a hill in Portland after work. I found an app that I still use to this day, and I was literally like sitting on the side of a hiking trail recording the first episode. It was really bizarre.
So Ryan was like, "Why do I hear a lot of birds in the background?"
I gave him a heads up. I'm like, it's gonna sound like there's birds, because there is. And if you listen to a lot of Tone Mob episodes, the app I used to work really well at filtering out noise, so I could filter, or I could record on all kinds of weird places.
Yeah. You and I used to use that. It's the Ringer app.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We stopped using it because it started not being so good.
Yes, that's exactly what happened. Yeah, we went to real microphone setups. Yeah.
Yes.
So
I still use it for Tone Mob because it makes it easy for the guests. And I don't have to worry about them. It still sounds pretty good, and I don't have to worry about them, having a setup in front of them, because they might. Who knows where they are? They might be out in the middle of the yard. I don't want to impose too many. It's already taking up time out of their day. I don't want to try to make it any more difficult than it could be. And pretty much everybody has a smartphone. So it
I
makes
will.
it easy.
I will admit that, and you pointed this out to me. There were many episodes where I was walking around my yard, and you're like, "What was that noise?" I'm like, "Oh, that was the hinges on my squeaky door when I walked to the garage." You're like, "Yeah, you
Yes.
can't do that anymore, man. That's it's horrible."
Yeah. But so I don't remember exactly how it came to be that I think what had happened is you were on Tone Mob, and then we just started talking like off the air like we do now, just
Right.
about random stuff.
Right.
We just like all the time. And then you were going to quit chasing Tone, and I remember you talking to me about it, and I was like, well, if you want to try it, I'll do an episode or two, and then maybe you can do kind of like what I am doing and have it be more guest based. And ended up that I was as we said early on, the guy who just won't leave your couch.
That's exactly what it was.
So
And
in a
back
weird
today,
way,
Blake's still
like,
here.
yeah, it's chasing Tone Mob wouldn't have happened without chasing Tone, but never in a million years did I think I was going to be one of the guys on Chasing Tone on a regular basis. That was not ever a thought to me at all. So it's really weird how many different directions this show has taken over the years.
Yeah.
I mean, and at this point, and I said this in the previous Chasing Tone, I've done more Chasing Tone than I have Tone Mob, just due to a lot of factors. Although I am starting to catch up. Things are finally at the pace where they should be, and I'm going to try to keep them that way, which is a good feeling.
Well, there are a few things this brings us up to, about where we are now, which is, well, hold on. So what I say?
It's
was
like
the last
102.
102.
Yeah. So
Okay. So let's see, 102. So it looks like 103. So March 22nd, 2016. So for the past 2+ some years, you've been doing the podcast. So
yes.
Yeah, and I've been thinking about it. And with all the customer suggestions that come in, or listener suggestions, I've thought about having a few like spring. How I do the tone tips every now and then. If it's like I'll do a video where if it's something I think could cross over and be of value to the podcast audience, I'll do it then. I'm not a big fan of like the Gary Vee stuff where everything gets put on the podcast. Sometimes it just doesn't translate well.
Yeah, sometimes it's awesome. Sometimes no, I need that visual component,
right,
as well. Yeah.
Right. So I don't like doing everything, but if it does cross over well, then I like doing that. As long as the whole thing is, as long as it provides value to the people listening, as long as they get something out of it.
Mm-hmm.
But I have thought about creating maybe another segment where I do interview some people every now and then. I would want to make it different than what other people are doing, because a lot of the other gear podcasts do have a lot of interviews, like Tone Mob, for example. Mm-hmm. So I wouldn't want it to be another Me Too thing, So,
well, I think just by nature of it being you and having your own perspective on things, that's why I actually listen to a lot of shows that are more. In fact, I would say the majority of shows I listen to, if they're not some sort of, fiction entertainment thing, they're guest based. And the reason why I like doing guest based and why I like listening to guest based is because regardless of, I can listen to the same guy interviewed by two different hosts, and it's a completely different podcast.
Right.
I've done that many times. Listening to, Tim Ferriss interview somebody and Joe Rogan interview somebody is two completely different experiences.
Yeah.
So I think by nature of you just being you and having your own perspective, if you did do guest stuff, I don't think, and I'm not saying this as a way to try to weasel out of doing the podcast. I really enjoy it, but I think that even if I interview Philippe and you interview Philippe, it's not going to be the same show.
No, yeah, it'd be totally radically different.
So I don't think you need to worry about like I think that's a very proven formula, and the host ends up making the show its own unique entity, regardless of, even though it's a similar format. That's why there's however many different late night shows. They're all the same format, but they are different shows, and some are good and some are not so good.
The trick would be staying on topic, as always.
That's always the problem. You and I are just both wired that way, and so that makes it You never know. You might have a guest. You might find it streamlines you a little bit. I don't know.
That's true. Yeah, I would not want to do that every week though. Not for guitar stuff. I think it's just I don't know. I say I would not. I've also said I would not want to host my own podcast. So
Yeah.
who knows what the future brings? But at this point, like I don't see it being an every week thing. Maybe a once a month thing or something. So
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that would be interesting for me, because I don't like listening to my own stuff. I thought that would get better over time, but I still don't really like it. Like I really thought that after a while it would be easier to listen to myself, and it is slightly, but it's still like my wife wanted to listen to a Tone Mob episode here while we were on a road trip recently because it had a guy from one of her favorite bands in it. Tom from MXPX came on the show and we nerded out. And she wanted to listen to that.
I thought you were going to go with Luke Bryan. Okay. Go ahead.
Oh, no. Not Brian Wampler.
No, Luke Bryan. Didn't you
Luke
say,
Bryan.
Yeah, didn't you say your wife's like a huge country music fan? She's a big fan of Luke Bryan?
She's a big fan of country music, therefore she does not like Luke Bryan.
So she's not a fan of Luke Bryan. Oh, my apologies, Luke. My apologies.
No, she's gonna if she sees you, oh, you're in trouble now.
Gonna trip me and shove me down the stairs, right?
Yeah, she's like, how dare you spread these rumors about me? But she wanted to listen to that one, and I was like, I don't want to hear myself. I don't. And I'm like in the car doing a road trip, listening to myself. I'm like, no. I don't know what that is. I've heard that that's a thing. Like most people don't like their own voice.
I don't. Yeah, you don't like your own voice. And there was I'm not going to bring up the study, but there was a study on why recently, and I glazed over after the first two paragraphs. So I can't tell you why, but I know there's some studying done on why that is. But I'm the same way. There'll be times where I'll listen back to the podcast to make sure that, maybe I wanted to make sure I did some EQ changing on a few episodes, for example. I wanted to make sure that like how that translated into like your iPhone earbuds,
Yeah.
because everything sounds like I'm editing through, big monitors, right? KRK monitors. And that sounds completely different than earbuds.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I fight that with the YouTube stuff, because sometimes I'll mix something down. I'm like, that sounds massive. In fact, I did on a video recently on what video? I don't even remember what video it was, but something with the plexi. Oh, I was going through all my different guitars. That's what it was. Oh, I did a tone tips out of it. That's right. So I was going through all the different guitars, playing through a plexi drive. And when I heard it back on my earbuds, I'm like, wow, there seems like there's no presence in it. And so people even commented like, wow, that's kind of muddy. And I'm like, man, it is muddy. It wasn't that way at all through my monitors though. So, and that was that happened to be one of those episodes where I didn't, there's a lot of times where I'll actually go back and listen with earbuds just to make sure, like try to find a happy medium.
Mm-hmm.
But I just didn't on that one, and I really should have. But time constraints with getting ready for guitar shows and everything this month. So,
right.
But yeah, so I'll listen to them occasionally, not the full thing. I'll just kind of skip around, and sometimes I'll listen to one, kind of get a chuckle out of it, of whatever we're talking about. But for the most
part,
they
don't go in my regular rotation. That's
no,
what I'm
not. I'm not even subscribed to my own podcast.
So I am, just to make sure that they feed properly. You know what I mean?
No,
like
I should.
I'm
not saying I'm not proud of that. I'm saying like that's kind of how much I suck. I'm not even subscribed to my own podcast. But
you don't want to artificially inflate your numbers. You're
no,
trying to do it. Yeah. That's really why.
I'm going to make 5,000 different accounts and subscribe to it.
Yeah. No, nothing like that.
That's what people do for giveaways. It's really annoying.
Yeah. See, that's just. I mean, I get it. You want that new piece of gear or whatever, and so you create a bunch of other users, but that's a lot of work, man.
It's a lot of work, and when you do it from the same IP, I can tell.
That's true. Yeah, there's a lot of ways to weed that out now.
Yeah.
So
what? Yes, this turned into quite the kind of the the history lesson.
Oh,
in
holy
some
cow!
ways.
We're at 40 minutes already.
I know. I was just looking over, like, oh wow, that was going to be just a brief thing that we touched on, and it wasn't brief at all.
Well, I know my next topic was going to be, what we can do to save the world, but we don't have time for that this episode. So we'll have to push that back.
No. We'll have to get back to that later.
Yeah,
We'll have to get back to that later. That's not that important anyway.
right. Yeah. So I guess wrapping it up, I would say this. I would say, like I said, if you have like always, if you have any things you'd like for us to discuss, you can email podcast@wamplerpedals.com, info@tonemob.com. Like we'll just, if you send it to one and not the other, we'll just forward it. So either way.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's probably the best way. You can hit me up on Facebook or something like that if you use Facebook or Instagram or Twitter a little bit, I guess. I don't use the messaging system on Twitter quite that much as I do Instagram and Facebook. So but it's pretty easy to get a hold of me. You literally can type out how to get a hold of Brian Wampler, and you'll see threads come up. I will talk about this real quick. So in preparing for this podcast, I use preparing in air quotes because that was about 3 minutes. So I just, as a joke, I typed in things to talk about on a guitar podcast into the Google machine. And out of 7,400,000 results, number one result is the Chasing Tone podcast.
Yeah.
And
like that doesn't help us at all.
No, and number 5 is the Chasing Tone podcast as well. It's just a different feed. It's on Stitcher instead of iTunes.
Yeah, that doesn't. Google did not help us on that one. Like, wait, we are the leading authority on what to talk about on a guitar podcast. This is not a good sign.
Right? Yeah. Don't look to us for that bit of wisdom.
Jeez. Well, Brian, it was kind of nice, kind of taking a trip down a memory lane. I don't know how useful that was, but it might. If you're a new listener, that is where it came from. So go back and check out all that old stuff. There's, between the two, sort of commingled related shows, there's like probably 400 hours of listening.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I don't even, I'm not even sure if I can get to my stats here to see how many total hours I have.
I know I'm not quite at 100 yet. I think I'm at 78, and I got well over 100 hours of Tone Mob. I know that just because I just happened to look at it the other day. So I'm sure Chasing Tone is somewhere close to 300.
Oh, it had
hours.
to be. Yeah, it had to be something stupid. So
you could listen to us until you go insane. Basically, I think we have enough of us on the internet that you could literally drive yourself crazy if you feel the need.
Very true. All right. So thanks for, I guess I would like to just on the podcast, thank you for being a part of a huge majority of it.
Well, I'm glad to do it. It's been really fun. It's led to a lot of really interesting opportunities. So, thanks for not kicking me off the couch.
And thank you so much for listening to the Chasing Tone podcast. I really appreciate it. If you have any comments or questions, please make sure to email podcast@wamplerpedals.com. Thanks for listening. Have a great week. We'll talk to you next week.